ladies and gents, my name is Scotty, and YouTuber boxing, it's quite a, it's a polarising topic, to say the least. And, some people love it, some people hate it. The way I view it, it sort of, at its purest form, is its own little subgenre between YouTube and boxing, because it'll never be boxing, and it is to do with YouTube. I mean, I guess that's the simplest way you can boil it down. And as such, YouTube boxers, I would not hold in the same regard I'd hold to actual boxers. But I still was curious. I was thinking to myself, I wonder who the best YouTube boxer is. And I've got 3 parameters that I'd like to judge them by. I've got their power, I've got their skill, and I've got their endurance. This does not include, their influence on the YouTube boxing scene. This is all just to do with how they are as a fighter. Because obviously influence is also a big part of a fighter, personality. There's a lot more you could judge them off of. But I'm going from just purely from a fighting standpoint, being someone who, enjoys boxing and, partakes in it. I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to actually weigh up the talents and see then at the end if who we find to be the best YouTube boxer, how would they handle in their respective weight class in the world of actual boxing. So, we're going to start. I've got a little tier list thing, and we're going to start with...
Y'all can't handle this. Y'all don't know what's about to happen.
Now, Jake Paul, he's probably the first person we think of when we think of YouTuber boxing. But I would not classify him, well, not in the traditional sort of... The way I define YouTube boxing is YouTubers fighting other YouTubers. There's no title or anything involved. That's the beauty of YouTuber boxing, is just people fighting. And there's no need for a title. But the issue at hand, Jake Paul, he doesn't really fight YouTubers. Well, he started off that way, but he's moved to a professional career. And that's sort of, that's its own farcical little thing itself. But his YouTuber boxing career, that was, he did alright. I think he was okay. He's definitely, he'd get a smack from any top 10 competitor at cruiserweight, which is, I'm pretty sure, the weight he fights at. So, yeah, there's that. But against other YouTubers, he'd do a pretty solid job, I reckon. He's capable enough. He's trained for long enough. He's trained longer than most YouTuber boxers. So, yeah, I reckon put him in a fight against most YouTubers, and you've got, he'd be a massive twat, but you've got a fight. So, in terms of his speed out of 5, I'd give it a 2. Honestly, you haven't seen many quick, fast-handed combinations from the guy. He's more picked his shots and just planted them. And power would be a 3. You sort of cut down the middle. He's not, he's not got knockout power. God, he's managed to knock out, has-been MMA fighters and a basketballer. That was notable. Not really, but the point is, he can deliver a knockout punch, and I'm sure against a YouTuber who, isn't trained in the same way a boxer is, doesn't spar as much, isn't conditioned to take that kind of hit, I'm sure he'd be able to do a good amount of damage. But I'm talking as a general standpoint, 3 out of 5 for the power. And then endurance. He's taken shots from ex-MMA fighters, and they do say, and this is something you can, there is evidence for, the last thing to leave a fighter is his strength. And that would therefore suggest that if he's taking hits from guys like Tyron Woodley, he can take a hit. I would say Ben Askren, but Ben Askren was never really a guy who threw punches. He was more of a kick. He used his kicks more. He wasn't really a very good striker. But regardless, there is some evidence that would suggest Jake Paul can take a hit. Now, his fights have not lasted particularly long because it's clear that his has-been opponents cannot take a hit. But that's by the by. I reckon if he went for 10 rounds, I don't know how well it would go for him, but you know, so far he's proved that he's got some endurance. So I'd give. I can't justify a 4, I don't think, but I feel like 3 would not be justified either. That's too low. So I'm gonna have to slightly bend my own rules and just say 3.5. So, you know, he's all right. As a YouTube boxer, he's all right. So, Jake Paul, where does he go on our YouTube boxing tier list? Now, from a boxing standpoint, he'd be B. You know, he's not throwing punches that are going to kill anyone, but at the same time, he's not dreadful. But as far as YouTube boxing goes, it's hard to admit, but he's got to go up there. Because as a YouTuber, if you were to fight another YouTuber, I don't think there are any other YouTubers that are as conditioned as he is. Unfortunately, because he is a massive wank. KSI. He's one of the pure YouTube boxers. He fights other YouTubers for, you know, it's not for success and progression like it is in boxing. He fights them, well, I'm sure he has his reasons. A lot of them being grudge matches and things, but that's by the by. Point is, KSI, he's fought Logan Paul. He fought him twice, and he's capable of these fights. He had 2 fights recently, I think in the same night, and you know he did all right. You know he's solid all around. He's able to fight like, I know that Logan Paul for both fights was trained by Shannon Briggs, who was his own sort of, well, he had his controversies, such as a very controversial fight against George Foreman in the 90s, but that's by the by. Point is, he's fought people who have had training, aka Logan Paul, who's been trained by actual boxers. So I think he's quite capable, and in that regard, I'd like to rate his speed, once again, 2. You don't really see fast-handed combinations. You see, and this is what you see with a lot of the YouTuber boxers as well. It's not an exclusive thing, because you see them trying to find the openings more. They're concentrating a lot harder on landing the shots than they are. Like, they're not shoe shining at all or anything like particularly technical. And in that regard, I will rate KSI as a 2 in speed. I would also, for power, rate him a 2. You know, he's not. I mean, KSI has not got the same power as Jake Paul, I think. And I think he's technically a little better than Jake Paul, but he's not got the same power. And in terms of his endurance, he's gone the distance. You know, he's fought decently. I can't take that away from him. I'd have to give him a 4. In regards to a YouTube boxer, you know, 4 out of 5 for endurance. So now, the important bit though, where does he go on my tier list? So we got Jake Paul up there in S. I'd like to put KSI. I'd like to also put KSI in S, but I can't. You see, Jake Paul has achieved a lot outside of the ring, whether you like it or not, me being of the latter. He's achieved a lot more outside the YouTube boxing scene, but KSI, he's a YouTube boxer, he's capable, and he's proved that. Now, Logan Paul, Jake Paul's older brother. He's interesting because he's in between Jake Paul and KSI in terms of his sort of style of fighting, because he had, for whatever fucking reason, he fought Floyd Mayweather. I mean, clearly lost, but that's by the by. But he also has done alright as a YouTube boxer, but at the same time, his only sort of defining fight in YouTube boxing was his second fight with KSI, which he lost. And of course, he got destroyed by Floyd Mayweather, and Floyd Mayweather is a small man who is way past his prime. looking at a picture of the two of them side by side, you'd have thought Floyd is out of his depth. But he picked apart Logan Paul, and Logan Paul looked helpless for a lot of it. So, yeah, I can't justify putting him there. He's just not done the same. He's not had the same effect as KSI on YouTube boxing. He's not achieved as much, because at least KSI's won. Unorthodox pick here, but I watched Creator Clash, and I saw, the first fight, it was Dad. Dad was fighting, and Dad brought a lot more than I was expecting. Just from that event alone, I knew that it was, Dr. Mike v iDubbbz was going to be a big thing, and a lot of the other fights were fairly underwhelming, if you ask me personally. But he really was, he was technically quite sound, and it was quite impressive actually, because it was clear that he had done his work, done his research, put some work in, and sort of got himself into a technique that suited him and he was comfortable with, and that proved really tricky for his poor opponent. But he was very much a capable, sound fighter. He did what he set out to do, and in that regard, I'd like to put him in B. I would put him in A, because I think he is probably a better fighter than KSI from what I've seen. But that's the thing, I've only seen one fight, and it was very one-sided. So possibly putting him up against some better competition, seeing what you could do when you push him, that would push him up the list. But as far as speed, I'd give him a 3. He was definitely throwing faster than some of the other guys you see here. Power, 3 again. And endurance, I don't know really, I'd have to give that a 3 as well, just because he didn't really take any shots, at least no big ones, none that slowed him down, and he just put the pressure on immediately. But that's the thing, I'd need to see more, so that's why he's just there. He's currently just in the mid. And finally, we have...
What we do here is go back.
Now, last up, iDubbbz. He was the creator of Creator Clash, and that was a big charitable event. It was a good thing, and I enjoyed his fight with Dr. Mike. Dr. Mike is someone who's had experience fighting, and iDubbbz held his own. He stood his ground, and he didn't lose to it by a KO or a TKO. It was a unanimous decision. So he was on his feet, and it wasn't even that he went out on his shield. He went out going the distance, which fair enough. That anyway, I think the problem is I think he's the same situation as Dad, where he's trained, it's clear, he's technically alright, but his only fight so far, unlike Dad, has been a losing effort. And he made a good account of himself, but he needs to. I'd need to see more of him to be able to get a firmer grasp on what he's fully capable of. So in that regard, he's just below Dad in the B tier, but that's by no means saying he's not capable. Boom. That's the end. Personally, having looked at all these guys, I think I'd be the best YouTube boxer, but that's by the by. If you've enjoyed this little breakdown of who's who, let me know. I probably won't read it, but that's whatever. So yeah. And thank you for watching. Subscribe, and I'll love you forever. Goodbye.